it's a lot to manage, and we touched on it there at the end. Trying to figure out which growth opportunities to go after, which growth opportunities are the right ones, and being able to identify those right growth opportunities is difficult. One opportunity might require you to grow capacity ahead of schedule or fill a large order request. Others might require serious amounts of capital investment, or maybe even a shift in your brand positioning altogether. So the challenge here is really seeing the forest for the trees, knowing when to say yes, knowing when to say no, taking a step back, and having a broader perspective on things. That's why we've invited Steve Crandall and Hayes Humphreys from Devil's Backbone. Steve is the founder of Devil's Backbone. Hayes is the chief operating officer. They're an incredibly fast-growing brewery out of Virginia that has had to make a lot of decisions about which growth opportunities they pursue. So they're going to share some of their core values, how they build relationships with key partners, and give you guys a sight glass into some of their decision-making abilities.
How you doing?
Cheers. Take it away, guys.
All right. Thank you.
So hi, everybody.
First off, I want to know if anybody else got nailed by a seagull outside, because I did. Show of hands, just a couple. All right.
So as Chris mentioned, I'm Hayes Humphreys. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Devil's Backbone, and Steve Crandall is our founder. Wynn really kicked the day off talking about the joys of nice, measured, smooth growth over a long period of time, and then Adam doubled down on that in his presentation, and Simon just really put the nail in the coffin. So we're here to represent the breweries that have not taken that path and have experienced incredibly disruptive, rapid, brutally
agonizing
fast growth.
Yes.
So show of hands, a little, little marketing work. How many people here have heard of Devil's Backbone before? No. All right, good. I see some people who should move to the Mid-Atlantic and become very brand loyal, and I see some opportunity in the room still. So we are based in Central Virginia. We operate 2 breweries in Virginia. We started out in 2008 in a small brew pub, and we expanded in 2012 into a production facility in the state as well. We distribute beer in just 5 states in the District of Columbia right now, and we're on pace to clear about 65,000 barrels of production this year. We're a lager-centric brewery, so our leading flagship brand is Vienna Lager, and it composes almost 60% of what we do. So it's a little background on us real quick. We're very young. We've only been in business for 7 years, and we've only been distributing since 2012, so you would be forgiven for asking yourself, why are these guys up here trying to teach me anything? And you would not be wrong. There's a lot we don't understand, but we're up here because of this. We've experienced ridiculous growth over the last few years, and we want to talk a little bit about our experiences. I don't know that everything we've done is right and wrong, but this is kind of how we've waded through, and hopefully there's something useful in here for everybody else. So the 3 things that we want to cover is one, be authentic, be true to yourself, have a brand. Simon talked about standing for something. We think that's really important as well. Think long-term, make long-term bets, try to be different somehow, and then make the right partnerships. We believe a lot that the best things that we do are things that we do in conjunction with other people. We've worked really hard to give ourselves a filter through which to assess growth opportunities, and it's something that's developed over time. When we started out in production and distributing, the first thing that we developed was a brand mantra, something to help us determine what we're about. And we came up with 3 words after talking to our staff and our customers, and they had been in the pub for 3 years already, and we tried to figure out, what is Devil's Backbone before we go wide and people's interactions with us change, and they go from coming and sitting in a restaurant and having a great meal for 2 hours in this beautiful setting to just pulling our beer off the shelf at Kroger. We need to be about something. We didn't need to know what it means to be a Devil's Backbone beer. So we came up with three words: rustic, community, and genuine. Those were the 3 things that our customers told us they really liked about our brands. And so we worked with that for a while, but we had to develop those further. I think we made a mistake that a lot of breweries make and continue to make, which is we we did a lot. We did everything. We said yes to every opportunity that came through the door. We sponsored everything we could. Every minor league baseball team, every festival, every whatever. If someone had a place we could sell beer, our calculus was basically selling beer there is better than not selling beer there. And so we said yes all the time. So as we've evolved, we've tried really hard to think about, what are the key components of our success, and how do we kind of double down on those things and give ourselves these guardrails, right? The ability to know what we're about and what we're not about, and what we can say no to. And so really we've come up with something that helps guide how we look at the future, and it also gives everybody in our company a way to look at opportunities and determine whether or not to say yes or no to things. So these are our 7 values: adventure, beer positivity, passion, integrity, family, humility, and stewardship. And those are, as we look at opportunities that come into us, how we determine what's right and what's wrong. That's led us to do some things like make investments at our brew pub rather than our production facility, which is financially a lower return investment, but we think it's really important because it really complements those values and it tells people what we're about.
The base camp, as we call it, is our brew pub, and that is the heart and soul of our business, and that's really the main contributor, we think, to our success. We are a destination brew pub. We're out in a county with one stoplight and 14,000 people in the mountains, and yet we've been able to draw 400,000 people to the location on an annual basis. And one way we do that is obviously through festivals. We have about 6 festivals a year. The brew pub is actually on a 100-acre piece of property that I'm in the building business, or used to be, and developed the property to sell commercial and residential lots, and that didn't work because I did it right before the economic downturn. But we did do the core business there was the brew pub, because I was a lover of craft beer. And the odd thing happened: as the real estate market dropped, the craft beer market took off, and we were able to scale that, and soon realized we had something with that. And we actually went back. We had sold 4 of the lots off in the residential piece for a good bit of money. We were able to buy them back at 25 cents on the dollar after the market dropped. And now the whole 100 acres is centered around the beer and the experience of people coming to that environment. And we think that lets them go home and reach in their refrigerator or go to their convenience stores and buy our beer, because it reminds them of this amazing place that they went to on one of their adventures.
I think we saw this morning those people are 61% more likely to purchase our beer as a result of coming to base camp. So we also try to think long term. We don't have, I think, we've existed in a craft beer world that's different from a lot of the larger breweries have been around longer than us, and they've seen, I think, more of the ups and downs than we have. But we strive to think long term. We don't really chase trends. Our flagship beer is a Vienna lager. We saw in some of the data earlier. People like amber lagers, but it's also a category that's declining. But it's what we do best. It's a comfortable beer. We're very, very good at making lagers. And so rather than chasing the trends, we make the things that we're good at, and that's worked for us.
And it's also interesting, in Virginia, when we started the business, it wasn't really a very crafty area, and especially where we developed our brew pub and our package and brewery was very rural. And we sort of equate the Vienna lager to our gateway drug, because a lot of people, at first the locals saw it and they said, "Oh, I don't like brown beer, or dark beer." And they tried it and they loved it and they accepted it. And it's amazing. A lot of little towns, country towns and things have turned around, and they're really into the craft movement now. So
yeah. We're constantly looking to find ways to be different than other folks. If we can do it in a big way, that's great. If we can only do it in a subtle way, that's all right as well. And not everything that we do is radically different than everyone else. Sometimes you take the opportunity that's there, but we make longer term bets that we think will pay off in the end to find places where maybe craft isn't as big right now. So obviously in the styles that we offer, they're not exactly on trend if you pull up the IRI data. Simon mentioned convenience. That's an area where we're starting to make plays in, because we think it's got to follow the trend of everybody else. And so, we're starting to make plays there. We look to partner with retailers who we believe are good, powerful retailers who may not be the best craft retailers today, But we believe in their business, and so we think that they'll eventually get there. So we start working with them now. We try, when we look at opportunities, to make sure that if we're going to engage in an opportunity, that we have the ability to actually handle it, to cover it, right? Everything that goes out there that has Devil's Backbone's logo on it is part of how people perceive our brand, and so we need to be able to effectively manage all the things that we have going on in the world. We've said no to a lot of things, particularly export is a great example. We've said no to a lot of export opportunities because we don't know anything about it, and we don't have the manpower right now to manage that piece of the business for us. And so we've turned it down because there's plenty of people who would export it for us, but then what? What happens to the beer after that? And that's the piece we don't understand. And the last piece that we do that I would share with everyone is we take a stab at strategic planning all the time, and our strategic plans change regularly. They are wrong regularly, but that's okay. Every time we redo it, and every time we compare what we thought was going to happen to what happened, we learn something, and that goes into the next plan. And
that goes along with the budgets also.
And the budgets are always wrong.
So he does the budget.
That's my I can't call it my area of expertise, I guess, but that's my responsibility there. The last thing we do, and this is probably the most important point when we talk about how do we evaluate the opportunities, is it's about who we do them with. Almost everything we do in the beer industry is with a partner, right? Whether it's someone outside the industry or it's our legally mandated partners in the middle tier. And I know for you, that's really the piece that's important.
Partnerships are important. Actually, two of my major investors in the company initially were guys I built houses for. And if any of you have ever built a home, you know how agonizing that whole process could be. And if you get to the end of it and you still like your builder, you probably cemented a fairly decent relationship. And so those guys invested in the company, and I sort of take that same approach to our distributors. Of course, we look at the details and the fine print, but sitting down with somebody that you can get along with, and even people that you can see socially, is important. And it was interesting to me to find out at some point in the process that you have three customers. You have the retailer, you have your consumer, and you have your distributor. And I think your distributor may be one of the most important parts of that, because if they're not interested in promoting your brand and working with you on selling your beer, then you're going to have a real hard time getting out there. So,
some of our best wholesalers have been de facto consultants throughout this growth. I mean, when we started out, we understood very little about what we were doing, and there were times when we put that plan together and charged into those ABPs and said, here's what we're doing, and they just looked at us and kind of laughed, and they said, no, you should probably do this, and they pushed back on us, and they've changed our plans at time, and it's been a good thing. We've taken a lot of feedback from them, and so we like partners who are going to both buy into what we're doing from the foundation, but maybe the tactics we push back and we exchange ideas on, and so that's really what an effective partnership for us is doing. One surprising partnership that we ended up entering into last fall was a partnership with a pub chain in the UK called J.D. Wetherspoons. So I mentioned that we have turned down many opportunities to export beer. Exporting has not been a part of our strategic plan up till this point. Through the development of great partnerships, our brewmaster had actually developed a long-term relationship with the brewers that work with Witherspoons, and through that, they ended up reaching out to us. They had seen that American craft beer was a really exciting place to be. They'd seen that the craft beer movement in Europe was gaining steam, and they, as the largest chain of free houses in the UK, wanted to be the place where you could come get the best, most exciting, cutting-edge beer. And so they wanted to start partnering with craft breweries. And so they partnered with us, and we went through the litany of reasons why we weren't interested in shipping beer overseas, and we ended up developing with them a really unique relationship where everything's contract brewed over there. We manage the recipe, they manage the distribution, and they manage the 950 retail accounts where that beer is sold. And what we gave up in the process was some freedom to do other things over there, which, as I said, is all right. It wasn't really part of the plan anyway. But what it's done in that kind of long-term thinking respect is it has allowed us to start building a brand over there. So today, exclusivity with J.D. Witherspoon's is a good thing. In the future, maybe it's more, and when we get there, we've got years of people drinking Devil's Backbone beer over in the UK under our belt. So it kind of checked all those boxes for us. It was a good long-term play. They've been a good partner, and that one made us adjust our planning a little bit, and it made sense based on who the person we were working with was.
This year we'll have sold about 20,000 barrels in the Weatherstone pubs over there, so it worked out pretty good.
It's effective. So given our time constraints, I mean, I think I've made my point. I had one more slide, but it's not really that important. We can take questions, and appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, yeah.
I like this. I like when there's plenty of time to ask questions. So thank you for sharing that with us. Oh, there we go. Thank you for sharing that with the audience. I think it is just becoming more challenging to figure out, what to say yes to, what to say no to. What were some things that you said no to a lot of things. You said yes to a lot of things early, but then you started scaling that back a little bit. What were some of the things that you guys, started saying no to, and why?
Territory's been the biggest, easiest thing.
Expansion.
I think we've probably covered all 50 states in terms of wholesalers that are interested in carrying the product. We've, had the opportunity, I think, to make a lot of easy sales, and sometimes that's happened when we've got extra beer in the cooler. But that's been I think, to me, the most obvious thing we've shot down.
Yeah.
And what do you think would have happened if you had opened up some new territories? What would that have caused you guys to do as a business?
It would have hurt us at home. We had some problems early on, it seemed every year, not having enough supply to meet demand. And even just in the state of Virginia, we'd open up a new territory and thinking that we had enough capacity, and we'd always be scrambling to try to keep up, and so that's been a challenge. So what we're trying to do right now is have 20% excess capacity, but at the same time we're trying not to expand very quickly. We just did a expansion into North Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia just this year, and we've been pretty much in our core markets for the last 3 years before doing any expansion.
Do you guys worry about how fast you've grown in such a short amount of time as the market begins to slow down, or as more competition comes online? Does that scare you at all?
In some ways it doesn't. I sort of see Virginia as an interesting place because it's really growing very fast in terms of craft breweries. I think we have 120 now with maybe 30 or 40 in development, and it exploded once we changed the law, SB 604, which allowed us to sell pints in the breweries. But I think for us, currently right now, the more breweries are educating people. Now, these are a lot of small breweries and not large scale. I mean, we are challenged by the bigger craft breweries more than all the new little guys coming on board.
All right. Hayes, we talked about this on the phone the other day. What were some of the mistakes that you guys made early on? Are there one or two that really stick out in your mind that you still to this day kind of continue to look back on, and it helps inform your decision making?
I think one mistake that we made early on that we still are struggling to catch up from is we've never given ourselves enough space, and early on I think we planned for the ideal result, and that rarely actually occurs. And so space has always been a huge constraint for us. We custom built our breweries from the ground up. We had the ability to build whatever we wanted to, essentially, and we didn't know any better.
Well,
so
but the problem was we built our first building was 15,000 square feet. It was supposed to last us 30 years. We went to the bank with that, and had all the calculations, and we were out of it in 2 years. We needed more room, and so right now we're operating with 35,000 square feet, and we need a lot more room than that.
So what are you guys going to do?
We're going to build more buildings.
Good thing you're a builder, right?
Yeah, it helps.
You got a lot of friends
Maybe.
there.
We did, even in some of the early, we opened, we thought we were being very modest in our expansions. We opened, Maryland was our first venture outside of DC, and we hit, or outside of Virginia, sorry, and we hit a capacity constraint immediately. And so we ended up launching in Maryland without any of our core flagship products, which is crazy. And that was something that took a long time to we had some great success with some of the stuff that maybe doesn't get as much love in Virginia as we'd like, but then there was a process of kind of re-educating everyone from wholesaler to retailer to customer about, hey, Vienna Lager is the thing that people are really into, and here's kind of our priorities and that sort of thing. So that was one that took a while to unravel as well.
We sit down every year with our distributors in November and try to project out what's going on in the following year. And we were taking the numbers that they were giving us and saying, oh, we get this much extra beer, we can open up another territory. And we would be getting invariably calls from them in January, February, saying they were off by 20% on the numbers that they gave us. And so that sort of messed things up a bit.
Yeah. Well, forecasting is difficult.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that
science.
people say is, oh, you don't have enough beer, that's a good thing. That is the absolute worst thing, because, I mean, that's what keeps you up at night, because these distributors, they've made commitments in amongst their staff and their sales, and I mean, that is probably the biggest lesson I learned, is you don't want to short your distributors. You do want to keep them up with enough supply.
Well, you want to keep them happy. That's what Adam
Keep 'em
Lambert was
happy.
saying earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah. So similarly, what's something that you guys are still figuring out, still trying to learn? I mean, you've learned from your mistakes, but life is just an ongoing learning process, education process. So what are you guys learning still?
I think consistency in our planning and consistency in the communication of our planning. So, having a good, strong plan and having that plan filter down to the whole organization. Our organization has grown rapidly, and so we've got more people that we're managing and more people that need to be looped in. When there's 12 people working for the brewery, you can all get in the same room and talk through things. And so I think a big challenge for us now is I think we know what we want to do, but it's now kind of actualizing that and getting everybody on the same page and marching in the same direction, and continuously delivering that message over and over. And that goes, with something like our values and that sort of thing. Now that there's so many of us, right, we can't necessarily, we're not going to participate in every decision that gets made. So instead, providing and training and building into our core DNA a system for kind of evaluating all these things at every level, lets us have some measure of control over what kind of decisions are made without actually being in the room, and that's
Right.
a huge challenge for us.
We
right
have
now.
given our departments some autonomy, but they are on a strict budget, where before it wasn't so strict, and that got out ahead of us a little bit. But that seems to hopefully it's going to solve some of the problems.
Right, and that was going to be one of my questions was, how are you guys empowering other folks in your organization to make decisions on their own? Clearly, you guys know the kinds of opportunities you want to say yes to, but there's a little bit of a trickle-down effect, all the way to the guy on the street that's picking out the bar that might carry, 5 of your tap handles. Mm-hmm. So how do you let them know the right and the wrong way to begin assessing the opportunities that come their way?
So for us, it's our program is the system of values and mission provides that framework. The other piece of it is hiring really good, smart, sharp people who are better at all of these things than we are. And so that's a huge piece of it too, and letting them bring to the table the skills and talents that they possess, basically.
It's surprising, and this is true, I think, of a lot of great breweries, is you sort of invent the processes. You start out, you really are starting from scratch, and you're trying to understand how to do things. My start actually came from the Brewers Association, a book I got from them on how to start your own brewery. I mean, that's literally where we started, and but there's no guidebook on how to go through this, how to build the infrastructure and the people and the mechanisms that are involved. So you have to go through it. And one thing I talk about to our team is our maturity, because we're so young. I'm envious of these companies that have had 20, 25 years to develop this level of maturity. And I think we're getting close to a point where we're getting comfortable with it, but it still is, a challenge.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
the scale at which you guys are producing beer would lead, I'm assuming, some of your distributor partners to believe that you're more mature, perhaps in the way that you operate than you might actually be because you have scaled so quickly.
We've been fortunate.
You talked, and this is my last question before we break here. You talked a little bit about long-term decisions and short-term decisions and, trying to pick between the two. What are some examples of long-term decisions for you guys, and how do you decide which one's more of a long-term partnership that you spend a lot of energy on, and what's more of a short-term decision? How do you decide, how to put them in the two buckets?
I think for us right now, we're in this really critical place, right, where we have amazing, we have amazing results in our home state in Virginia, right? And so we just talked about, being a local hero or being a regional champion, and we've got a really, really strong, solid core, and now we've made some moves into new markets, into some areas where we haven't been before, and the jury's out on are we relevant, is it going to work? So we're in this place where I think we're trying to determine, can we go to that next level? And these new markets are, I think, our proving ground. And so for us right now, I think everything has to be geared towards the long term of making those markets work. If they don't work, if we don't pour everything we have, if every decision we make in those markets isn't geared towards being successful in the long term, then, our future is being a super awesome brewery in
Regional,
Virginia, not being something bigger. And so everything right now has to be focused on making those work.
Right. Yeah. Well, it seems like you guys are doing something right. 65,000 barrels this year.
65,000 barrels this year.
It's a hell of a place to be.
Thank you, man.
Guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Cheers.